Modern hunting rifles are lighter, cheaper, and easier to build than ever before. But somewhere along the way, most of them traded mechanical craftsmanship for molded plastic and production shortcuts. 5 legendary European bolt actions refused to make that trade. The Mauser 98, Mannlicher-Schönauer, Sauer 90, Husqvarna 1900, and Sako 85 still offer features many new rifles quietly abandoned. And by the time we reach number 1, you will understand why more than a century of engineering still beats modern marketing. At number 5, the Husqvarna 1900. This Swedish bolt action does not win by being flashy. It wins by feeling mechanically correct. The action uses a 2-lug push-feed bolt, but one locking lug incorporates a dovetail-style guide rib that tracks through a precisely machined channel inside the receiver. That guide keeps the bolt aligned through the entire stroke, reducing the sideways wobble and binding that show up on many cheaper 2-lug actions. Run the bolt hard from an awkward angle, and it still moves with calm, controlled resistance. There is almost none of that loose shopping cart rattle you get from rough, mass-produced receivers. The polished steel surfaces slide together like fitted machine parts, not components that were simply dropped into the same box. On a properly maintained example, the trigger breaks with a clean, dry snap, while recoil depends heavily on the chambering and stock configuration. Here is the deal. The Husqvarna proves that push feed is not automatically inferior. When the geometry is right and the steel is finished properly, it can be fast, quiet, and extremely dependable in the field. That smooth operation matters when you need to cycle the rifle without lifting your head or making enough metallic noise to alert everything in the timber. The deal breaker is availability. These rifles are no longer sitting on every gun store rack, and condition varies heavily from one used example to another. Replacement parts and experienced gunsmith support can also be harder to find than they are for a modern Remington or Tikka. Sound off below if you think old-school machining still matters, because this Swedish sleeper is impressive, but the rifle at number 1 takes mechanical reliability to an entirely different level. At number 4, the Sako 85. Now we are stepping up the game. The Sako 85 was built around a simple idea that most modern manufacturers abandoned. The action should actually fit the cartridge. Instead of forcing nearly every chambering into one short action or one long action, Sako produced multiple receiver sizes. That means less wasted steel, a shorter bolt stroke, better balance, and a stiffer action for the cartridge it was designed to run. Under the hood, the 85 uses a hybrid controlled feed system. As the round rises from the magazine, the extractor begins controlling the case before it reaches the chamber. That reduces the chance of the cartridge moving freely inside the receiver during a rushed reload. A fixed mechanical ejector handles extraction speed based on how hard you run the bolt. Pull it slowly, and the case falls nearby. Rip it back, and the brass gets launched clear. The tapered dovetail scope rail is another old-school advantage. It is machined directly into the receiver instead of depending entirely on small screws holding a separate base. Paired with Sako Optilock rings, it creates a strong mounting system that protects the scope tube and holds zero under heavy recoil. The bolt throw feels short, controlled, and clean, while the trigger breaks with a crisp release instead of dragging through a long wall of creep. The deal breaker is financial. Original rifles, magazines, rings, and replacement parts can set you back far more than comparable equipment for a basic American bolt gun. Some shooters also dislike the ejection angle when using oversized scope turrets. Still, the 85 gives you something rare, a rifle designed as one complete mechanical system instead of a collection of cost-saving parts. At number 3, the Sauer 90. Entering the elite tier, this German rifle takes bolt smoothness to an almost unreasonable level. Unlike a conventional action where the entire bolt body rotates, the Sauer 90 uses a non-rotating bolt with 3 rear-locking struts. Lowering the bolt handle activates an internal cam that forces those steel struts outward into matching recesses inside the receiver. The main bolt body stays aligned instead of twisting against the cartridge and raceway. That mechanism is why the action feels so different. Lift the handle through its compact 60-degree arc, pull straight back, and the bolt glides like a precision drawer riding on polished rails. There is no gritty scrape and almost no sideways chatter. The short lift also gives your fingers plenty of clearance beneath a large hunting scope, making fast follow-up shots easier without breaking your cheek weld. Then there is the roller-bearing sear system. Instead of relying entirely on 2 flat steel surfaces dragging across each other, the mechanism reduces friction at the point of release. The result is a trigger that builds pressure cleanly, then snaps like a thin icicle under a boot. Some versions also include a set trigger function that can reduce the pull dramatically for deliberate shooting from a stable position. Here is the performance quirk. Those rear-locking struts place the locking surface farther from the chamber than a traditional front-locking action. That can allow fired brass to stretch more, especially with full-power loads. Hunters firing factory ammunition may never care, but reloaders hoping to reuse the same cases repeatedly could see shorter brass life. Even with that compromise, the Sauer 90 remains a mechanical masterpiece. It is smoother than the Sako 85, more sophisticated than the Husqvarna 1900, and built with the kind of expensive internal machining most modern factories would never approve. But smoothness alone does not take the crown. The next rifle adds a feeding system that feels almost impossible to jam. At number 2, the Mannlicher-Schönauer. Closer to the crown, this Austrian masterpiece delivers one of the smoothest feeding cycles ever built into a hunting rifle. Its signature rotary spool magazine holds each cartridge in an individual machined recess around a spring-loaded steel rotor. As the bolt moves rearward, the rotor turns and presents the next round directly in line with the chamber. That controlled alignment reduces cartridge tipping, protects soft-point bullet noses, and creates a feeding stroke that feels almost liquid. The split-bridge receiver and distinctive butter knife bolt handle give the action its unmistakable character. With fewer broad surfaces dragging against the receiver, the bolt travels with remarkably little resistance. Point the muzzle downward on a properly fitted example, and gravity can nearly finish the closing stroke. Run it from the shoulder, and the mechanism whispers, instead of rattling like loose hardware in a coffee can. Balance is another reason these rifles remain legendary. The internal 5-round magazine sits flush inside the stock, keeping the rifle slim and placing its weight close to the supporting hand. The trigger on a well-preserved example breaks like a porcelain edge, while the full-length wooden stock softens recoil into a long, steady push rather than a sharp slap. The deal-breaker is ergonomics. That elegant butter knife handle is low, narrow, and less aggressive than a modern oversized bolt knob. With gloves, cold fingers, or a large scope mounted close to the action, it may not be as fast to grab under pressure. The rotary magazine is also expensive and complicated to repair if damaged. Still, no modern plastic magazine can match its mechanical elegance. The Mannlicher-Schönauer feeds more gracefully than the Sauer 90 and carries more naturally than the Sako 85, but the number 1 rifle sacrifices a little elegance to gain something even more important: absolute reliability when the situation turns ugly. At number 1, the Mauser 98. This is the action every serious bolt gun still gets compared against. Designed by Paul Mauser more than a century ago, it uses true controlled round feeding. The massive full-length claw extractor captures the cartridge rim as the round leaves the magazine, then holds it against the bolt face through the entire trip into the chamber. That means the cartridge never floats loose inside the receiver, and the risk of a double feed during a rushed bolt cycle is dramatically reduced. Pull the bolt back, and a fixed mechanical ejector uses your own movement to clear the case. Work it gently, and the brass drops close. Drive it hard, and the empty case gets thrown out with authority. Unlike a small spring-loaded plunger, this system does not depend on a tiny internal spring staying clean and strong. The bolt feels heavier than the Mannlicher-Schönauer and less glassy than the Sauer 90, but every movement feels deliberate, controlled, and nearly impossible to confuse. Its real advantage is the safety architecture. Two massive front-locking lugs handle normal chamber pressure, while a third rear safety lug acts as a final mechanical backup. Gas relief ports and the large bolt sleeve flange help redirect hot gas away from the shooter if a primer ruptures or a case fails. The three-position safety can lock the firing pin while still allowing the bolt to be opened, or lock the entire action completely. The Sako 85 is more refined for scope mounting, and the Sauer 90 cycles with less resistance. The Mannlicher-Schönauer feeds with more elegance, while the Husqvarna 1900 feels lighter and simpler. But none of them combine controlled feeding, powerful extraction, redundant locking, and catastrophic failure protection as completely as the Mauser 98. That is why it takes the throne, not because it is the newest, fastest, or prettiest rifle here, but because when the shot matters, and the next round absolutely has to chamber, this old German action still delivers the standard everyone else is chasing. Modern rifles are lighter, cheaper, and easier to replace. But these 5 European legends prove that progress does not always mean improvement. The Husqvarna 1900 showed how a simple push-feed action can become exceptional when the geometry and finishing are done right. The Sako 85 proved that matching the receiver to the cartridge creates better balance, shorter travel, and a more complete hunting system. The Sauer 90 turned bolt operation into mechanical art, while the Mannlicher-Schönauer delivered feeding smoothness that modern detachable magazines still struggle to match. But the Mauser 98 remains the king. Its controlled round feed, full-length claw extractor, fixed ejector, third safety lug, and gas management system were not designed to look impressive in a catalog. They were built to keep working when the rifle is dirty, the shooter is under pressure, and mechanical failure is not an acceptable option. That is the real difference between a classic European rifle and another disposable modern platform. One was engineered around production cost, while the other was engineered around a lifetime of service. So which one would you trust in the field? The glass-smooth Sauer, the elegant Mannlicher-Schönauer, or the battle-proven Mauser 98? If you want the raw truth without the fluff, lock it in right here.